My guests today are Derrick and Sean Callanan, co-founders of Play Media, a digital media agency based in Melbourne, Australia, that is focused on helping brands get involved in video games. They use their expertise to help companies navigate through the sometimes complex world of esports, live streaming, advertising, and the games industry, as well as connecting them with publishers. And Sean are good mates who have experience working in the traditional sport, music, and media industries. They've managed to shift their knowledge into esports and both ended up running esport teams in Australia. Tune in to listen from the very best on how it should be done. I'm Katarzyna Dąbrowska, and it's simple, you know? I've got and Sean with me today, the co-founders of Play Media. Hey guys, how's it going?
It's great.
Good, thanks.
Guys, what exactly is Play Media and what do you do there?
Good question. So Play Media is a digital media agency in Australia focused on helping brands get involved in video games. We connect with brands and media agencies to all forms of audiences across video games, whether that's esports, live streaming, events, whether it's advertising in-game or around game, working with publishers, any way that brands can and would like to connect with video game audiences, we help facilitate.
Okay, and what made you want to start this business together? Because you co-founded it together. How did that happen?
So Sean and I have known each other for about 12 years or so. We've both met working in sports, in digital, in traditional sports. I was working at Cricket Australia and Sean was running his own agency.
Okay.
I then went into music and radio and online video and more of the media side of things. And we both ended up running esports teams here in Australia and sort of taking that experience and the learnings that we have got from traditional sports, from digital, from other forms of media. We saw a really big opportunity to enhance the way that brands were being presented, the different opportunities to get involved in gaming, and sort of really take it beyond just the sort of standard esports sponsorship and open up some of those other channels for brands.
Okay. Sean, can you tell me a little bit about your first esport team and what that looked like?
So I was helping the world of sport understand the world of digital, and they were starting to look at esport. Is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? And being a digital and audience guy like Chris, I saw esports as an opportunity. The guys at Riot Games asked me to help them find someone to take over the 8th spot in the OPL, the Oceanic Pro League, the League of Legends league there. And I eventually put my own hand up, and Gravitas was formed. So I own a League of Legends team, Gravitas, and started working more closely with Chris as he was the CEO of Order Esports, and we were working with Riot on how to better commercialize the broadcast, how we could bring in more brands into the ecosystem, and that working relationship over a couple of years was pretty much set the foundation for Play Media, because we were out there selling esports properties, but realizing that there was a bigger opportunity there to engage streamers, develop events, even help brands get inside games. And so that's sort of how I guess we matched our skills to form Play Media.
And can you guys tell me a little bit about how esport looks like in Australia? Because, I left 5 years ago, and 5 years ago, I got to say that I barely even heard anything about esports in Australia. I'm sure some things were happening, but probably quite low key and within quite a niche industry. So how has it been developing? How did it start, and what is it looking like now?
So it's still a developing region from an esports point of view. I think and it also depends, like every region, on different titles. So some of the AAA titles around League of Legends, Counter Strike, and the like, getting a bigger and better scene. ESL is running and is the broadcaster for a lot. And then pre-pandemic, we were starting to see a growing events business come out of it. IM up in Sydney. Melbourne Esports Open was hosted at Rod Laver Arena for 2 years before being shut down. So it's still growing, but I think the last 3 or 4 years, which is where Chris and I started to be part of, we're starting to get to see bigger players, agencies, sporting clubs starting to invest in esports and seeing it as a growing space, that's pretty much where the excitement lies. I mean, Chris has a different experience coming from a different team. What's your take on the Australian esports scene, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of the profile has grown a lot over that period, from sporting bodies getting involved, mainstream media companies getting involved, lots of different investors looking at the space. We've seen dedicated esports bars opening up. There's a really big one here in Melbourne, the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, called Fortress.
Wow. Where is it?
It's in the Emporium Shopping Centre, right in the middle of the CBD. Open 24 hours a day.
Ah, wow. Wow. Of course it is.
Yeah, amazing. It actually opened in March last year. We helped them with the launch, and then unfortunately, 5 days after they opened, they had to shut down. So
No.
their first year hasn't been a great one with the lockdowns, but they're back open, and yeah, it's a busy on a weekend, so it's good to see.
Wow.
They're not the only esports bar in town. If we didn't give a shout out to our friend Lachlan at GG Easy, we'd be in a bit of trouble.
We would.
And where does Lachlan have his joint?
In the CBD on Queen Street. It's more of a dedicated bar as opposed to
Okay.
bar and PC cafe like Fortress.
Okay. That's so interesting to me because, I remember like internet cafes, 20 years ago, let's say.
Yeah.
And now we have esports bars. It's just like such a progression, I think.
Yeah, and they'll pull big crowds in as well on different times of the day. They're opening up especially on Sunday to have a Dota screening for one of the finals that's happening in Singapore. So the audiences are out there, and they definitely like to come together and have a drink and a soju and watch the games.
And this is interesting because you say that it's a bar. So essentially, obviously, we're talking people that are 18 and over. And I think for a lot of people, people that are interested in esport are a little bit younger. So it's interesting that they've opened bars up for people that are of legal age, and that's the only people that can really go in there.
That's a common. I mean, I guess, sometimes even a misconception that brands have, that depending on the title, but they think esports fans or gamers are of a younger age. But when you're looking at titles that have had 10 years in market, like Counter-Strike, like League of Legends, that audience has grown up with them. So yes, there are some people who are younger that are playing it, and some titles will skew younger. But titles, the AAA titles that have had time in market, do have 26, 27, 28-year-olds that have been, they've played since season one. They want that experience of, I want to go to a bar, I want to watch an esport, or I want to go and play. And so that's where we're seeing the development of these types of venues, and I guess the growing gaming space.
They're invested in the culture and the community as well. And when they're younger, they had more time to play. They haven't got as much time now, but they still want to watch it and they still want to be part of that community.
Yeah, it's interesting to me as well because, Aussies, like, they're so huge on sport. And I'm wondering, can you guys comment a little bit on the comparisons between, traditional sport in Australia and esport in Australia?
Well, we can. Yes, Australia is a sports mad country. We love all of our sports. I think the Australian market overall has got more sports teams per person than anywhere else in the world. For context of your listeners, there's 26 million people in Australia, and there's, I think at last time I counted, there's like 45 or 46 professional teams, and that's not even if we didn't include the probably 15 to 25 esports teams. If we added that to the mix, when you compare it to California, they have 6 to 8 teams in the same venue. So there's this strong passion for sport, and we are starting to see that national fervour translate into esport, especially when you start seeing esports teams competing on the international stage, which is still happening. You do really see the Australian esports fans show the same pride as when you see an Australian team competing abroad.
Okay, Chris, can you tell me what does it look like now if a brand wants to invest in esports?
Yeah, sure. So we're seeing Obviously the endemic brands, the PC makers, the headsets, the keyboards, your Logitechs, Alienwares, Razers, etc., have been in the space for a long time, and they're doing lots of different activities. They're working with influencers, they're sponsoring esports teams, they're doing activations at events. Sort of all the ways you can get involved in esports, they're doing them all. We are starting to see more non-endemic brands getting involved. Puma, Marvel, L'Oreal are a few that come to mind, and they're doing what from our kind of background in sports I'd consider relatively standard types of activations. They're doing content, they're doing logos on jerseys, logos on broadcasts, relatively simple things to get involved from a sort of sponsorship point of view, whether you're looking at traditional sports or esports.
Okay, and what are the different ways? I mean, you just mentioned a couple with logos on jerseys and things like this, but what are the other ways that brands can be noticed through, let's say, just streamers, not necessarily esport teams, but because that's more like a sponsorship thing, but for streamers. You're a streamer, you've got your audience, a brand wants in on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, we sort of, when we talk to media agencies and to clients here in Australia, we really sort of say there's two simple ways to get involved. One is manually and work directly with the streamer to have them mention your brand on stream, show your product, demonstrate it, put the logo as an overlay within their stream, mention you in chat, mention you on their socials. They've really got to spend a lot of time and effort to get your branding and your messaging across to their audience correctly in a way that's going to resonate for their audience and for the brand. And the other is to work with platforms like InStreamly that can automate a lot of that process and use their technical firepower to provide the overlays that can automate that process, allow them to work with lots of streamers at once on a campaign that gets good results for them.
And are brands still reluctant to do this, or are they kind of flocking to this new potential way of getting to audiences?
They're not flocking, but I think it's just a matter of time. It's just an education piece. It still fits within the broader space of gaming, does still require education for marketers on what it is and how to get involved. And a lot of what people have been hearing over the last few years has been around esports. It's been around sponsorships, and sponsorships are generally a big ticket investment, and they go for a long period of time, 6 months, 12 months, if not longer. Whereas something like InStreamly, it's campaign based. You can run it for a week, you can run it for a month. That's how media agencies buy other forms of media, and so that they understand that process and they like that. And also it's more measurable. Media agencies have to show to their clients that the money they're spending on their behalf and that they're investing on their behalf is getting a return for the brand, whether it's in brand awareness or sales or some other metric. And so sponsorships haven't been great at doing that, and things like InStreamly are a lot better. So the education piece is still happening and it's still relatively new, but those that when you explain it, they understand it and they get it, and they're a lot more open to it.
And that's been the piece for us when talking to brands. They like, especially over the past 12 months, when a lot of key things, like we said before, sport really popular here. When sports stopped, when COVID hit, gaming continued. So Gravitas only missed one game day, and then the guys were playing from home, and so a lot of agencies and media buyers were like, esports and gaming is on our list of things to do, but they never got to it. And so during the lockdown and during all the change that we went through in 2020, they put a bit more effort into trying to figure out what they could do in the space. And they definitely came to it in the same way, like Chris said, in the same way they tried to book campaigns and media on different channels. And one of the challenges was, well, we can't do that in gaming. And so that's why, one of the reasons we were seeking out solutions to be able to give them a like and an apples for apples type comparison with other media that they're buying. And so that's why we like to be able to book those campaigns on a campaign basis.
You mentioned the pandemic. How did the pandemic influence the esport industry in Australia? Because you guys had some pretty hardcore lockdowns, especially in Melbourne.
The thing was, like our games were being played in a studio in Sydney, and so some teams were flying up from Melbourne. So Order decided to not fly as the concerns started to be raised. And so, yeah, one day was lost, and then the games were, adapted. The broadcast was adapted. There was a lot of change that happened really quickly to be able to move all the broadcasts online and have all the players be safe. So the content continued, the games continued, which was good, and especially when there was no other content out there. It did continue, but also there was a lot of people just finding Twitch for the first time and looking for new content. So it really did give it a nice bump, and especially for the agencies looking at, hey, should we be looking at gaming and esports as a channel?
Yeah, I mean the other aspect, which still continues to this date, unfortunately, is that the international events that our guys qualify for is obviously a lot harder for them to get over there and compete in. We've seen a bunch of top players and teams relocate to bigger leagues, and that's part of their sort of career development journey. But others have done it just to be able to have the best competition and play against the better, bigger teams across Europe, North America, and Asia as well.
I was wondering about this because we all know that we don't have the best internet in Australia. And it's been an ongoing battle, I think, for years. And so, how is not only the internet connection quality, but also the distance affecting professional gaming?
Yeah, I think the quality becomes an issue when you're talking about having to play another team or in a competition that's in a different region. You can't do it, and you really just need to be there. So the distance only then becomes a challenge in that it's a lot easier to go from Poland to Germany than it is to go from an 8-hour flight from Melbourne to Singapore to play in a Southeast Asian competition, and inevitably, with the size and scale and the level of investment that's in Australian esports, the funds to do that often aren't there. So you're really just restricted to playing in the Australian and the Oceanic tournaments and qualifiers, and making your way up into international events via that route.
Okay.
There is some hope that I see there are setting up some game servers in Guam that potentially might be able to allow some games but to be played, in the Asia Pacific region without too much travel. But like Chris said, it's to play internationally, you've still got to jump on a plane, and that hasn't been easy.
I'm curious about Australian influencers and also Australian esports teams. Are they finding traction and popularity outside of Australia, or are they kind of really staying local and just and finding their audiences there?
No. Definitely at a global level. We can give a lots of examples of the sort of top streamers and their talent agencies here in Australia. So guys like Muselk or Laserbeam or Lachlan or Fresh or Loser Fruit, all really popular streamers across Twitch or YouTube. And we talk to their talent agencies here, and they're telling us that these guys have got 95% of their traffic's coming from overseas, not from Australia. And that's partly because of the scale here. There's only 26 million people, but these guys have got 10, 15 million subscribers, and they putting up a video every day that's getting 1 million, 5 million views. It's natural that audience is going to be overseas.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We there isn't really that many people. I actually thought it was still 21 million in Australia. 26. That's grown a little bit.
Yeah, but some of those creators, like the Click Crew that Chris mentioned, also the guys at Misfits, they're just producing so much killer content, and yeah, a lot of it is being consumed in North America and in Europe. But they do some strange hours to eventually hit their best audiences, but they're really killing it as far as if you're looking at YouTube charts and who are the big streamers. There's a fair few Aussies in that list.
And tell me, how would you compare if you know, for example, how would you compare Australian esports to European or American esports? Is there a difference in how it all plays out, or is there also maybe a difference in how the audiences perceive it, or is it all just kind of the same thing?
It's pretty similar as far as where it's tracking. I think it's just a couple of years behind, I guess, the commercialization and the sponsors getting on board that you might have seen, in Europe and in some of the North American markets. But as far as talent goes, some of the Australian esports players have performed well in multiple titles. Australians have done quite well in FPS titles. We're now seeing, I think there's now 6 or 7 Australians playing in the LCS in the League of Legends scene there. So from a talent base, similar to the sporting field where Australians seem to come from a small nation but still perform on the world stage, we seem to be performing well from an esports point of view.
Yeah. I want to take it back a little bit to both of your personal experiences. Chris, are you a gamer? Were you a gamer? Was it something? Did this come out of your own passion for gaming, or is it more like a business decision? Yeah, this is booming. This is growing. Let's go this way.
No, it's definitely both. I grew up playing Police Quest and King's Quest on PC. I had an Atari, had various Nintendo consoles. Have been a big PlayStation gamer. I've never really been a big PC gamer, but definitely, love playing games. Continue to play games. I've got kids now. I play games with them. In the early 2000s, I worked in video games from a publishing point of view. So yeah, definitely love it, but also love being involved in the business side of it as well.
Right. What about you, Sean?
So I'm more of a data and audience guy. So when someone says you're a gamer, I start talking about my love of Donkey Kong many years ago. So I didn't mind playing the handholds, but I've never been a massive gamer. But what I do like is seeing different digital audiences and how they congregate around things that they love. And to me, that's gaming, whether it's esports and people around games. And I think that's where the marketer in me loves the world of gaming, because the fans love the games, brands want to get involved in the space, and that's the exciting space that we're playing in, is helping brands get into that space and not do it too awkwardly, and do it authentically. But yeah, that's the bit. I still play games on occasion, but yeah, you're never going to get me playing a game on stream because I'll just embarrass myself.
And tell me, you guys, where do you think the future of esports is going, especially in Australia?
In Australia, I think it's still on the up. I think there's a lot of growth there. I think it's been graded harshly because a lot of the global hype. Whereas I think slow and steady, we've got, if you're looking at traditional sports, we've got leagues that are 10 to 12 years old that are still developing. Esports in this region isn't even that old. So what will esports look like in 5 to 10 years? Melbourne Esports Open will happen in August. It will be on Rod Laver Arena, the same place that the Australian Tennis Open. My vision in 5 to 10 years, there'll be 30 to 40,000 people turning up to that event on a yearly basis, and that will be made very easy for brands to get involved and to understand why they want to get involved. So long term, I've very much got a long term view on esports, and the foundation of that is everyone loving gaming.
Yeah. Chris, can you tell me what has been the most challenging thing of setting up Play Media, or the most challenging and the most exciting, the most fun?
It's two sides to the same coin, I think, is, the working in games and working in media and entertainment is a lot of fun, and there are a lot worse things you could be doing. And it's fun to go and talk to brands and to agencies about the audiences, about how passionate they are, about what a great opportunity it is to get involved. And I think Sean said it earlier, we do a lot of the education stuff, the 101, this is the basic stuff. That's sort of, still the challenge is to get the education piece through and get people to understand the great opportunity it can be. But we're having a lot of fun doing that.
What do you think people are not understanding?
The simplest thing is the old cliche that a gamer's a 16-year-old boy in his dungeon and he's overweight and has pimples, and that's certainly one of the sectors of the market, but it's not the only one. We talk a lot about the growth of mobile gaming and how many females are playing that, and the average age of a male gamer is still somebody in their 30s because they're playing on console and they're playing on mobile and they're playing with their kids. And when you sort of show the overall size of the market and the different ways to get involved and target different elements of the market, then people can start to open up and look at those opportunities, but you've just got to take them on that journey.
Okay. And what do you think the potential of in Streamly is on the Australian market? Because you guys just signed this partnership, and what are you thinking of doing? What's the plan?
I think I really am excited about the potential, both for the growing creator space. So there's a lot of people that have started streaming or want to become streamers and want to become full-time streamers. As Chris said before, they've got some great role models with Laserbeam, a former tradie that's now got his own skin inside Fortnite. So there's people that say, "Hey, I want to become a streamer," and not quite knowing what they need to do, but then they are building these engaged audiences, and so there's a way for brands to tap into that. And so that's where I think there's excitement, because there's more streamers coming on board, but then there's also brands wanting to get into the space, but wanting to know what happened, who saw it, how many clicks. They want to know that type of data. So that's why we, reached out, and really excited about the Streamly partnership.
Is there anything comparable to in Streamly on the Australian market? Because obviously, like, you guys are in Australia, you've come all the way to Poland in some way to do this. Obviously not physically, because obviously, but so I'm assuming maybe there isn't really anything like this on the market, or is there?
No, there's not. That's the thing. We've, like, both Chris and I have always been early adopters of looking out for new sports and ad tech. We did a bunch of searching. It's one of the advantages or challenges of being in a 100-day lockdown, which we had. We had a lot of time to check out and find new tech. There's influencer marketplaces, and there's a few of those in this market, but it doesn't really fit for the gamer space, and it doesn't offer brands what Streamly offers.
Okay.
That's I guess there is a few different things in the influencer space, but nothing that crossovers into the world of gaming.
Okay, that's cool. We're going to slowly be wrapping up, so I'm going to ask you guys my two favorite questions. The first one is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start out in the esports or this kind of streaming industry?
Sure, I'll let you go first.
Okay. As someone who owns an esports team and gets multiple emails daily and DMs asking to be hired, this is I'm actually going to give the same advice. They need to realize that it's a business, and produce business outcomes. And so what I mean by that is, how can you help the business that you're trying to get in, whether it is an esports team or a media company that's sporting esports, or your own streamer? Like, how can you treat what you're trying to do as a business, and drive business results? So if someone said to me, "Hey, can I work for your esports team? I promise you I can sell 100 hoodies every month," they would get a job. Whereas if someone just came and said, "I love esports. Esports is awesome. I want to work in esports. Can I work in esports?" Like, that's not overly compelling. And it's something that I've seen in the world of sport, which is the same. Hey, I love sport. I want to work in sport, but not looking at what is the business behind it. So it's still a developing piece, but coming at it like a business. So having a resume, being compelling in what you're going to offer. And when someone says, well, if I'm going to pay you money, what do I get? Have an answer. Is what I would say. Looking at it that way, and not thinking that that person's got a team and they're going to pay me to do something. You've always got to be producing some results for the business. Otherwise, the business won't continue.
Yeah, I think the passion is really important. If you're young and getting into this space, particularly here in Australia, it's still very nascent. There aren't massive amounts of opportunities, so you've got to show, as Sean says, what value you can provide, and that's got to be around the things that you're passionate about. If it's around content creation, what skills have you got there? What experience have you got there? If it's around the commercial side of things, show what value you can deliver there, what relationships you've got with media agencies or with brands or others where you can help add value to that company. It's, ultimately, unless you're sort of starting out in your own stream and you've got to be a jack of all trades, then you're joining a media company, an entertainment company, an esports team, whatever it is. They produce content, they distribute that content, and they sell that content. And you've got to understand what value you're providing in that.
Yeah, totally.
Same for the streamer. Like, you've got to start looking at yourself as someone that a brand will want to partner with. And so when when you're talking to someone, whether it's opting in for an InStreamly campaign or talking to a partner or talking to an esports bar to say I'm going to go stream there, if you're able to say, oh, this is how many people come to my stream, if I ask them to do something, they end up doing it. A streamer that can do that and it has a really good understanding of their audience and what they can drive is really important.
And tell me, you guys, what advice would you give to your younger selves?
Well, for me, I think it ties in a little bit to that first answer, but I'm not really a natural networker. I would say to myself, get out and network more, because the way that you're going to show people that you've got that passion, that you can add that value, is by meeting them, and that's how forming those relationships will open doors and open up those opportunities that you're looking for. So like Sean said, we went to a pitch night last night. Go to the meetup at the esports bar, go to the other events that are happening, shake someone's hand, have a conversation, offer some value, and when they've got an opportunity for you, they'll come to you with it.
Nice. Sean, any words of wisdom for your younger self?
For my younger self, it's trust the process. Like, where I've ended up is not where I thought I would be. But everything that I have done has prepared me for where I am today.
Yeah.
So the skills you gain at a younger life are adaptable. We're no longer in the, leave university and have a job for 40 years. Most people are going to change jobs and change careers. The skills you learn in those careers are adaptable in multiple places. So at the time, as a 21-year-old, I wanted to work in sport. It took me 15 years to get there, and now I own an esports team, but I wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have done the other steps. So build the skill set and then realize how you can adapt that skill set to what you want to do later in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just add to that, it's a good point, because I think, the 20 plus years of work experience I've got, every job I've ever had, apart from probably the first one I ever had, nobody ever had that job before. It was the first person to have that job title at that company. And I think that the way that the technology is changing the way we live, changing the way that we consume entertainment, create entertainment, what have you, not just in gaming, but sports, music, the whole space, that's just going to continue to happen more and more and more. So the point that Sean makes is true, because the jobs that are around that people will be doing in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they don't exist now. And you've got to, utilize those skills that you're creating along the way to take those opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit about following the process and just taking an advantage of different opportunities and see how the world shapes, because it's a completely different landscape now than what it was 20 years ago.
I mean, Nerf is hiring a chief TikTok officer. That wasn't a title 6 months ago.
Yeah. All right. Listen, guys, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great day, or the end of your day, because it's like 4 p.m. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.